Hi there. Chapter 8 of The Keeping Room. Dear Father, Cornwallis had ridden away on his great white horse with drums and bugles sounding. He is off to fight the ragged troops that try to rid South Carolina of the mighty English army. His replacements here, Lord Rawdon, proves to be even more cruel. Our family was rounded up, told to take only what we could carry with us. It was the horrible Keegan who came for us. When George stumbled with his blanket, Keegan prodded him with a musket, and he took pleasure in our dismay at being moved into the tiny quarters where men had recently died with smallpox. Mother, of course, protested. At once, Captain Keegan was beside her. My lady does not take to the prescribed new home. He gave her a mocking bow. It was suggested to Lord Rawdon that you might react just so. Shall I repeat to you how his lordship replied? His hideous laugh interrupted his words, and he slapped at his leg with mirth. Tell Mistress Kershaw, says he, that the gallows stand ready if she prefers them for her brats. For a long moment, Mother said nothing. Instead, she stared directly into the face of Captain Keegan. I wonder, sir, what manner of man you are, she said at last, and if ever a mother has loved you. Then she reached for the valise she had sent down, and she marched on toward the door of the death cabin. I'm about to make one good strike back. We sit on the steps of the smallpox cabin. One soldier is left outside the tiny building to guard us. At least Captain Keegan does not stay. My mother insists that we sit here while she looks about inside. We have barely settled when Cato appears with hot water, soap, and rags. My mother comes to the door. She is surprised. They allowed you to come? She asks Cato. I did not ask their permission, mistress. His dark eyes dance with defiance. Mother and Cato scrubbed the floors and the walls of our new quarters. I will never use those mattresses, Mother says, but she will not allow me to help with the carrying. Instead, when Cato hoists one end, my mother manages the other as well as could any man. Reckon Mr. Lord Rawdon wanting these for his bed, says Cato, and we all laugh. It is now night. We are settled upon the floor. Not possible to put hands on the household bedclothes, Cato apologized, but he produced blankets for us, which he managed somehow to secure from the very supplies of the British. Finally, we are resting. Moonlight plays about the door, but it does not light the corners of our new prison, where I imagine smallpox has become a great hairy creature ready to creep across the rough boards toward my sleeping family. When I am sure that Mother is asleep, I rise, get one lighted candle the British left on the shelf near the back wall, and place it so that I can see the sleeping little ones. We have no netting, and two fat mosquitoes hover over little Sarah's face. Asleep, she looks even younger than her 5 years. Gently, I brush back the golden hair from her round cheek. Suddenly, I fear that I might burst with an almost unbearable need to protect her, and I know that what I am about to do is right, no matter the consequences to me. I take the candle and move toward the door, hoping a British sentry does not see the moving light and come rushing in to see what I am up to. To my relief, there is no sudden intrusion. At the doorway, I lean for a moment against the frame, gathering my courage. Not wanting to stare at the stockade, I turn my eyes up to the moon. It is a full, bright ball, so close that I think I could toss a pebble smack into its middle. I know, of course, that there is but one moon. Do the rays, then, which bathe us in silver, belong to Carolina or to the British who now possess our land? Yuvan no doubt would say it is because there is but one moon, one earth, one God that we men must learn to live in peace. Yuvan's little brother and sisters are not being exposed to smallpox, I whisper to the moon. The moon does not reply. In order to give my family a needed rest, I have decided to wait until just before dawn to carry out my plan. Perhaps I will sleep just a wink or two myself. I slide down to the floor, and with my legs spread across the doorway, I finally float off into slumber. I wake just as a bright spot appears over the roof of our ballroom, which is now filled with British soldiers asleep on cots. I remember how the smell of their burning tobacco alarmed my mother. It will be only by God's mercy, she said to me one night, if some worn soldier does not fall asleep with his pipe and set fire to us all. I smile, and I think that it may be God's mercy that I have had this idea, and I know I will need his mercy to carry it out. First, I spread my blanket near the door. Neither Sarah nor baby Rebecca stir when I move them to the blanket beside the door. George is harder for me to lift, and he moans as I strain to rise with him. I freeze, certain that my mother will wake, but perhaps because of her day spent scrubbing the cabin, she does not. There's no way to move Mary without waking Mother. So when George is settled beside the two smaller ones, I am ready. After assuring myself that Mother remains asleep, I take the candle and the blanket upon which George slept back to the corner of the cabin. I hold my breath for the moment it takes to the twisted blanket to light. First, there is a thin thread of smoke. Then, in an instant, a bright flame reaches toward the sacking tacked to the cabin wall. I struggle with the impulse to smother the flickering red spot as it touches the sacking, but a fitful cry comes from George as he turns against the hard floor. I remember that I am doing this thing for my little brothers and sisters. I watch as the flame climbs quickly up the sacking. A cracking sound begins to fill the cabin, and at the exact moment when it's too late to dash the fire with the water bucket, I scream to my mother. When we are outside, we stand shaking for a moment, and I can see the shock of this awakening in the little one's eyes. We stare at the flames. I am still shaking, but it is not from the cold. I have small hope that the British will see the fire as an accident. Of course, I will not let them blame my mother. What will they do to me? I shrug my shoulders. There will be no place for my family here now. Surely my mother and the others will be sent to Burndale. They will not be exposed to smallpox there, and there will not be so many British soldiers. My mother returns to me. There is no doubt that she knows what I've done. Joey, how did you start the fire? She asks. The candle and a blanket, I am quick to add, but there was no danger. I moved them first. With my hand indicating the smaller children, I waited for my mother's response, and I noticed the sun has changed from a ball of orange to a bright yellow. Mother shifts Rebecca on her other arm, puts the free one around my shoulders, and leans her head down to rest against mine. I am afraid, she whispers, they won't just let us get by with this. Almost before the words are out of her mouth, an officer comes to us. You did this on purpose, madam, he says, and I half expect him to draw his sword and run my mother through. No, I step out toward the soldier. With a little cry of protest, Mother reaches toward me, but I pay her no mind. My mother had nothing to do with the fire, sir, I say. It is I who put the candle to the blanket while she slept. And so I am now in chains in the keeping room. I was dragged into the house by an officer and was taken to Lord Rawdon himself. He is a young man, yet his eyes are hard, and he holds his head in a most arrogant way. He watched me as I walked toward him between my two guards. There was a cruel twist to his smile, and I thought that he would surely kill me. Bit of a scrapper, aren't you, boy? It seemed there was a trace of admiration in his voice, and I began to have hope of being spared. Yes, I said, and my gaze met his straight on. No more. We can't have it. I've no time for childish warfare. There are armies for us to fight. A few days in chains may quiet you. He nodded his head with satisfaction and waved dismissal. Then, as he turned to leave, he added, after that you can serve our men. Make a little slave of you, we will. It does not matter. Just as I had hoped, my family is being sent to Burndale. I am not allowed to say goodbye to my mother, but my spunky little sister sneaks down to the keeping room stairs to see me. A guard is on duty at the large front doors, but he seems unaware that I am to see no family. We have little to say to each other of late, and for a moment there is an awkward silence between us. It was brave what you did, Mary says. I smile, glad to be at last her hero. There's not much time. I hate to leave you behind. She reaches for my hand. Please don't be mad at me, Joey. I shrug. I'm not mad now. I am sorry I yelled at her. You'll have Uncle Samuel to make you laugh. Mother's younger brother is a great favorite of Mary's and mine. I am proud of the fact that he was the first white person to be born in Camden, and even more of the fact that despite his Quaker upbringing, he went off to Charleston to fight the British. Mary tries to smile. My eyes fall on the books that stand on a small shelf near the table where Euban and I do lessons. Suddenly, an idea comes to me, and before I can change my mind, I say, take some books, Mary, as many as you can carry. You can study them, and when we're together again, we can talk about what you've learned. Your books? She seems to doubt her ears. Yes, it's high time that you've had some real learning. I'd help you carry them if I could. I hold up my chained hands. You know, Father does not believe a woman should concern herself with much knowledge from the books. Her brow is drawn tight, and she watches my face closely. Father may not always be right. The words come out without my having planned them, and they seem to bounce from brick wall to brick wall. Mary and I stare at each other. Each of us knows that an important moment in my life is occurring. Won't you need these? She is already across the room and gathering books from the shelf. If ever Euvan is allowed to come again, he will bring more. Hurry, Mary. When her arms are full, she goes as quickly as she can toward the stairs. Then, turning back, she comes to place a quick kiss upon my cheek. At the moment I can no longer see her in the doorway, a loneliness deeper than any I have ever felt comes over me. Lord Rawdon is true to his word. I spend 3 days in heavy chains that cut into my feet and hands. Cato smears a thick yellow salve on my wounds, and he brings me a mat like his to spread upon the floor at night. On the first night, I lie awake for many hours. I think Cato is sleeping, but he speaks into the darkness that surrounds us. Misery eases some, boy. I sure understands misery. Every day since they brings me away from Africa. You know something, boy? I done lost every soul I loves. My mammy sold, my wife sold, 3 little child sold, all gone, just gone. Oh, I know misery. He does not seem to expect a reply, and I can think of nothing to say. Down toward the creek, an owl hoots into the night. I hear no sounds from the soldiers inside the house or from those in either army who sleep outside. For a time, I try to pretend that no war wages. I tell myself that my father and mother and the children are all asleep upstairs. I say that Cato and I have decided to sleep here in the keeping room as a sort of lark, and that he has fallen asleep telling me the stories of his early happy life in Africa. Then I give up efforts to create a make believe world. A war is not easily pretended away.